a soldier. I don't want to go to war. I'd rather stay at home, around the streets to roam, and live.
The Somme still ranks as the biggest battle ever fought. The British, deploying 12 divisions, attacked on a front 18 miles long, from Gommecourt in the north to Montauban alongside the French in the south. The German front line held all the high ground. They had turned 9 villages along its length into fortresses, some of which were first-day objectives for the British infantry, but which were never in fact captured in the following 4.5 months of the battle. The enormity of the losses on that first day is almost beyond comprehension. There are about 60,000 people here in Wembley Stadium at the Live Aid concert, the same number as the casualties on the first day of the Battle of the Somme.
July the 1st, 1916, was the most bloodthirsty day in the whole history of the British Army.
One thing I remember about the 1st of July 1916 was that it was a very nice, bright, sunny summer's morning, which makes you, I think, much more courageous than if it had been cold and wet and dull.
On the 1st of July, luckily for me in a way, I got wounded just as they started the attack. I was hit by shrapnel in the left hip. And I saw a mine go up, Hawthorne Redoubt. We saw that go up, and after that I was sent down to the casualty clearance station by our doctor. As they went over, I went back. What they call walking wounded in those days. I was just able to walk.
At the lifting of the barrage, a whistle would blow, and up the parapet, over the top and towards the German lines.
I went over the job at 7:30 on the 1st of July, 16. And going over, my next door pal were killed straight away. I, unfortunately, or fortunately I should say, got as far as the Jerry Wire, and I led there until 7 o'clock in the evening with shrapnel through my legs. I crawled back, and every shell hole I came to, there were lads in, wounded, shouting, "Oh, send somebody, we're full of wounded here."
The whistles blew, and our first line stood up and moved forward. Now, we'd been told not to run. We had to walk. And we must carry our rifles at a most ridiculous position up in the air. And yet suddenly I saw all our men lie down, and I wondered if they'd got some further instructions. Then they didn't move, and the second wave did the same, and no movement. And it dawned on us then that they were all casualties.
You can quite understand when you're in action, chap be killed about 10 yards from you, and you don't know whether he's killed or not, or wounded. He's just not there anymore. You couldn't make any headway against machine guns. You just imagine going across open ground, shells bursting all around you, and machine gun bullets hitting the ground like sand around you, and spitting all around you. It's a miracle that you don't get hit.
Stan Boucher of the Accrington Pals lay unconscious in no man's land. When he came round, he found an abandoned Lewis gun.
Well, I thought, now I'm all right now, I've got to go. So I went and picked up this gun, and I got down in this shell hole, and there I waited. I tried the gun, and it was all right. Everything was in order. Well then, right in front of me was the German trenches. This here communication trench, you know, that I've been telling you about. And I laid in this shell hole for about half an hour, and then he started to come up this here communication trench with the Germans. Oh, about 10 or 15 of them, all in a heap, came up in it, you see. Well, I was in a dead line with them, and I made a good account of myself then, you see. We were annihilated. Our battalion, which he was so proud of and we were so proud of, was annihilated in the time it takes you to walk 700 yards.
The First World War was more than simply a waste of good men. The Somme, and later Passchendaele, were the hinges that swung a door shut on Britain's imperial glory. Nothing would ever be quite the same again. Ulster has never forgotten the sacrifice of its division, based on the volunteer force raised to oppose Irish Home Rule. This tower at Thiepval commemorates their 5,000 casualties when they were the only British unit to achieve all their first-day objectives. The losses are enshrined in the Protestant rituals of Northern Ireland to this day. The parade banners of the Orange Order bear the words, "Remember the Somme." The mining communities of South Yorkshire also suffered heavy losses. 2 battalions were raised from Barnsley alone and were known as the 1st and 2nd Barnsley Pals. At the 1985 Labour conference, a delegate reminded the party of the miners who fought for their country in 1916 and said that the strikers of 1984 were no more defeated than were their gallant forebears on the Somme. Idealism perished on the Somme, wrote the historian A.J.P. Taylor. The enthusiastic volunteers lost faith in their cause, in their leaders, in everything except loyalty to their fighting comrades. Towns like Accrington, whose young men had volunteered for the war in such innocence, were devastated by the losses of July the 1st, 1916. Nearly every family in the town was affected. Their losses were all the more poignant because this was the smallest borough in the country to raise its own battalion. They called themselves the Accrington Pals, though their official army title was the 11th East Lancashire Battalion. The borough recruited just over 1,000 men, mostly from Accrington, but also from its neighbouring towns of Blackburn, Burnley and Chorley. The Pals had a powerful sense of local pride in having formed their own fighting unit for Kitchener's new army, from among the sports clubs and street corner pubs, the mills and mines, the factories and farms, footballers, swimmers and athletes of this tightly knit Lancashire community. After the 1st of July, as the pages of the local newspaper filled up with portraits of the killed and wounded, the feeling that something especially terrible had happened to its battalion began to take hold of Accrington. The press, deliberately starved of news by Army headquarters, kept reporting brave deeds, but said nothing about the extent of the British losses. Angry relatives, desperate for information about their husbands and sons, besieged the mayor's house, convinced that he was withholding news from them. And when the casualty figures finally did come through, they were truly awful. There are about 700 people in this picture, representing the number of Accrington Pals who went over the top to attack the village of Sayre. 585 were cut down on the battlefield, officially described as casualties, all in the first hour of the attack.
Next morning I had to take a few men, a squad of men, with me to find the Fusiliers' pay books from among the dead. And it's a picture that's been in my mind ever since. Absolutely horrific. Every yard or so there was a dead man. And of course we had to sort our own men out, the Fusiliers, from the others that had been before, and collect their pay books. And you could see then war at its worst, because there were men with half faces, men with corpses rather, with empty brain cavities, headless corpses, corpses without limbs, and we were tripping over intestines where some men had been disemboweled, and that was all the way up to the German wire.
They were put into shell holes. There were no graves dug for them. They were put into shell holes. You might get 3, 4 or 5 or 6 into the crater, and then you'd shovel the earth with the little spades that we had, cover the bodies up. There were no crosses put there. We had no wood. We had no nails. We had no hammer. So it was just covered up and left.
I had a pair of mitts on my hand, you know. My kilt and my mitts caught on the barbed wire, and there was I found myself eventually buried and stunned and blinded, because I got muck and filth all over me. I don't know what hit me or what dropped there. I couldn't get out of the damn place. The noise of rats squealing and small rats scuttling around. I hate rats anyway, and they used to, sometimes they'd start eating a man before he was dead, you see. The rats were terrified as well of the shell rat, but after they got a great feast on dead bodies. So ugly, horrible, loathsome creatures.
Two shells fell, one on the front and one on the rear, and the lad was buried. Another lad and myself rushed into the traverse, and all we could see of him were his legs kicking. I got over one leg, my mate got out of the other, and we pulled as hard as we could. We couldn't move him, so we started scratching away with our hands. And when we eventually got to him, we pulled him out, and we found he was dead. He'd got the belt or the strap of a steel helmet was under its chin, where it should have been on the chin, and the flanges of the steel helmet had trapped his head, and in pulling his legs, we'd actually pulled his neck out, and we didn't even know his name. The lad was 18, and it was the first time he'd ever been in the line. The 14th of July, the diary just says the day was spent in consolidating the position and burying the dead. That day, I hoped to bury some 450 to 500 Welsh, English and German bodies. The routine for burying the dead was, the first thing, remove the equipment. If the body was too badly damaged, cut the equipment away. Then we dug graves 8 foot long, 6 foot wide and 2 foot deep. When you got the man to the graveside, you took his pay book out of his right hand breast pocket, where it was always clipped. The pay book contained all the details, the man's religion, his next of kin, his regimental number, and he always had to make a will. That was in the pay book. The left-hand pocket was the wallet. Then we cut the identity disc from the man's neck, put the wallet and the pay book together, tied them with a string. Then, when the man was in the grave, we buried them 6 to a grave, head to tail, the little parcel tied with a string, a bayonet was stuck at the head, and the little parcel put on the boss of the bayonet. Then the steel helmet on the top to protect it from the weather.
How had it all gone so terribly wrong? Why were so many young men sent walking to their deaths? Such brave men that the German General Ludendorff said the British soldiers were lions led by donkeys. Sir Douglas Haig had misgivings about Rawlinson's order for the men to walk across no man's land, and suggested that the first wave of infantry ought to make a rush. Rawlinson would not agree. Haig, as commander-in-chief, should have insisted, but being a cavalryman, he deferred to Rawlinson's long experience as an infantry officer and gave way. Not yet a field marshal, Haig may also have felt unable to pull rank on someone equal in seniority. This failure on Haig's part and Rawlinson's intransigence were the main reasons for the slaughter of July the 1st.
I thought General Haig wanted shooting. That's what I thought.
I think he was a man who never cared for men's lives, and about 1917 he became known to us as the Butcher. We called him the Butcher.
He was simply the most experienced general that we had. I don't think I can say more.
So why is it, in spite of all the evidence of Haig's incompetence, some military men and historians still rate him as a great captain? Well, it could be argued that given the conditions of the First World War, his particular authoritarian traits were not without value. His driving ambition, his obstinacy, his fixity of purpose, his orderly mind, and even his imperviousness to the tragedy of human sacrifice on a gargantuan scale added up to at least one way of winning a senseless conflict.
I don't know anything about generals. I never had any contact with them. They were there to win a battle. I recognise that, and had to be answerable to the government and the people at home that they won the battle. And they were obviously not interested in my emotions, because they couldn't. Thousands of men, how could they possibly know what I'm thinking about marching up the road into action, and all the other chaps with various things on their mind, wondering if I'll survive. You got your wife or your family at home, your mother and father, your relatives, and you might be killed. You hope you'll get a blighty one.
He boasts and skies from morn till night, and thinks he's very brave, but the men who really did...
The German stronghold of Beaumont Hamel, another first-day objective, was not taken until November, when David Watson was one of the Highlanders who made the successful attack.
We got into the Swire ravine, and here we found dugouts made with solid concrete, electric light, and carpeted with blue circle cement bags, empty bags. And after about 3 hours bombing, I was hit on the foot by a lump of shrapnel, which the steam had been taken out of by ricocheting off a tree before it got my foot. But I couldn't walk, so I was taken out of the battle. And the blue circle cement bags annoyed me for a long time. And after I went with the Army of Occupation over the Rhine, when I was called out for demobilization, we were taken off the train at Cologne and shipped down the river to the Dutch frontier. The following morning, we landed in Rotterdam, where we stepped into a huge wharf where there were thousands and thousands of bags of cement, blue circle, every one of them. So someone was making money out of it.
This huge memorial, designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens, dominates the skyline of the Somme from its position on the Thiepval Ridge. On it are the names of every British soldier classified as missing in the Battle of the Somme. It has to be big. 73,000 names are carved on its pillars. The Battle of the Somme finally bogged down in the November mud of 1916, by which time the British Army was still 4 miles short of Bapaume, which Haig had set as an objective for his cavalry. Some first-day objectives, like that of the Accrington Pals at Serre, were never taken. But a German counter-offensive in 1918 retook in 1 day all the ground won at such cost in the 4-month Battle of 1916. Frank Moylan was a captain on the Somme in 1918 and was taken prisoner in this field near Maricourt.
It's rather a sober thought to recollect that 2 years after advancing in the initial stages of the Battle of the Somme, we're still approximately in the same place and with the loss of 250,000 men.
The casualty figures hold within them thousands of stories of personal loss. Bill Hay lost his best friend, Alec Wright.
We found him lying at the side of the trench, very badly mutilated he was, and we had a bit of a pact between us. If I was killed or wounded, he would tell my mother, and if he was injured, I would tell his mother. It's a kind of schoolboy pact. So anyway, he died. I always remember when he was dying, he died lying there. He said to me, "You will tell my mother, won't you?" And I said, "I will." I was devastated. I lost my pal. I didn't care what happened to me then, whether I lived or died. If you lose somebody who's very close to you, you've lost something. It's not possible to describe what's happened to you. You're really not in your right senses. It takes a long time. Even today, I still remember Alec and wonder what he would be like if he lived as long as me. We were very, very great close friends. Anyway, I went home and leave, and I went to see his mother. She wasn't married, and told her about how Alec died, and she said, "You're not telling me the truth." I said he was shot through the heart, you see. He couldn't tell her he was. And I said, "I'm telling you the truth. I promised to tell you if anything happened to him." I said, "I was with him when he died." So she accepted that.
It's nice, as I say, to have a reunion. It's nice to have an annual dinner and talk about these things. It's nice to have a regimental tie, and it's nice to have your gongs on every armistice day, but is it worth it? I don't want my grandsons and my great-grandsons to have to decide whether it's worth it or not. We don't want any more.
Sir, I have a photo in the house and I look every day. Yes, it's a thought that's in my head all the time. Has been for years.
Oh, we'll never tell them. No, we'll never tell them. We spent our play in some cafe and fought while willing night and day.
Yes, I never regretted joining the army, and we had good times and bad times, and I well remember every minute of it. Every night I go to bed, I think about it, and all my pals.
we're here because we're here. We're here because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you've a Lucifer to light your bag, smile boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So, pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
Cradled most of the land creatures and